Here's Larry Coates talking about dry spots on your horse's back.
Hi, I'm Larry Coates, and I'm out here at Oklahoma City this year at the U.S. Finals, and I just want to talk about a subject that keeps getting me brought up about people coming to my booth and asking me questions about dry spots on a horse's back, and they want to know, what causes it and what actually, if it's a bad thing, good thing, in between thing, what we should be looking for, what causes it, stuff like that. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of illustration and talk about it a little bit and give you kind of heads up and what we maybe try to prevent it from it. So actually everybody, on a dry spot is actually a pressure point, and when you get a pressure point, it smothers the horse's back and it doesn't let it breathe. So therefore, you get dry spots. So a horse's back's got to breathe to be able to sweat. Well, it's okay, so what do we do to try to prevent it? Well, there's a lot of things we have to look at. For one thing, a pad. A dirty pad, a pad that's wore out, that's hard, will also cause dry spots. Wool skin underneath the saddle will cause a dry spot, because the wool skin under the saddle is what the protection point of the withers when the saddle sits down on a horse's back, that helps let a horse's back breathe. And that wool skin, if you ride a saddle a lot and you start getting dry spots, a lot of times it's the wool skin that gets matted down so hard, and that will cause the dry spots to come appear. And I've had a lot of saddles that come in. It's about 5 or 6 years old. People call me up and they say, Larry, all of a sudden my saddle's been fitting my horse's back really good, and all of a sudden I'm getting dry spots appear. So I tell them, I said, well, first I said, look at your pad, and if the pad has been packed down up there in the front where the bar pads hit all the time, I said, try a new pad. And if it's still dry spots, and I said, turn your saddle upside down, look at your wool skin. If you can knock on the bottom of the wool skin where the skirts are up there in the front where the bar pad is, and it sounds like somebody's knocking on the door, you need to replace that wool skin. And I've had people send me saddles. They think that the saddle's it's broke, it's twinked or something like that. Now I'll put new wool skin on it, send it back to them. Bam, fixes the problem. So the wool skin is the most important thing about a saddle, especially if you got a saddle that doesn't dry spot a horse, and all of a sudden it does appear dry spot in a horse. One other thing about a saddle that all of a sudden appears on it, you need to look at your horse's back, because a horse can drop 25 pounds in a week's time if it gets real hot. And if a horse drops pounds, he gets a little thinner in the wither area, and it's going to cause that saddle to run, to be too wide, sit down too low, and it's going to be running forward. So you're going to have forward pressure on that, and then you're going to have dry spot. If you got a brand new saddle, you get it, and you're having dry spots, there's two things that we need to look at. Is the contour of your horse's back. If your horse's back's got a rock in the back, the back, and the bars are straighter, you're going to hit in the front, you're going to hit in the back. You're going to bridge across, and you're not hitting in the middle of the saddle. Therefore, you're going to have pressure in the front and pressure in the back. You're going to cause a dry spot. A lot of times, if your saddle's too wide and it's running, it sucks up in the front end, the back end goes up, you're going to create dry spots because it's all running downhill. Anytime you got forward motion and the saddle's running downhill on a horse's back, and you got forward motion, all your weight, when you're getting on it, all your weight's going forward, so all the pressure's in the front part of the saddle. So we got to narrow it up, pick that saddle up, get it balanced again, like I've always talked about. Get that saddle balanced and release pressure and get more pressure in the middle of the saddle, because that's where all the pressure's at. So that's another deal that we need to deal with on a dry spot. There's some horses that are built low in the front, high in the back, and that's a real problem that I see today on a lot of heel horses, because they're smaller, they're stouter, they're thicker, they're real thick in the loin area. I run across one yesterday up here, and I looked at it, and sometimes you can't get rid of a dry spot on a horse like that, because if you get a saddle that you pick the front end up and you widen the back out and try to get it as balanced as you can, you still run downhill a little bit, because that horse is run downhill so hard that it's impossible. But the one thing I tell a lot of them, that if it is a dry spot, as long as it's a big dry spot, because a bar pad is about a 5-inch diameter, so if you've got a 5-inch diameter dry spot on both sides, it's equal, it's got equal pressure, and as long as that hair's not fuzzy or ruffled up, you ain't got a problem, because a team roper is not going to ride a horse long enough to really hurt one. Now if you've got a dry spot that is fluffy or swirly, then that saddle's moving, then we have a problem. We want to stock that part of it, but that's an ill-fit saddle. So there's two different types of dry spots, and when you unsaddle and you see a dry spot there, rub your hand across it, and if that hair is real nice and slick, you can probably feel a little bit of moisture on it, and that's not really a real big issue. But the biggest issue on a dry spot is if you get a little fuzz area, and then when you cinch it up in the front end, put your saddle on your horse bareback. Don't put a pad on him. And if you cinch it up and that saddle don't move, then you've got a good fit saddle. But if the back end comes up, then we got an issue that we got to deal with. We got to figure out what's wrong with it, because there's a couple different things that we need to, work with a little bit. But so just always remember that if it's a dry spot, and it's a big dry spot, and if it's a little bit wet and you put your saddle on him and it looks like it's balanced on your horse's back, 9 times out of 10 it's because your horse is running downhill, all your pressure's going forward, and it's not a real big issue. But if you got a balanced saddle and you're getting dry spots and the saddle still looks like it's fitting him good, then check your blanket and check your wool skin if it's an older saddle, because 9 times out of 10 it's going to be your wool skin, and you can put $250 wool skin on a saddle and make that saddle fit good. Because if you use a saddle 4 times a week in the team roping pen, the life expectancy of wool skin is about 5 to 6 years. So that's a cheap maintenance for your horse's back. So anyway, if you have any other questions, you're free to call me at the saddle shop. You can send me pictures, emails, whatever you want to do, and I'll be glad to answer your questions. And we've been out here at the U.S. Finals. We'll be out here next week, and I just want to thank everybody for riding the Coach saddle.